Let's begin today's lecture now. It is session 2 of the mind training episode. Today's topic is how can we balance the right and wrong in the gray area. Previously, in the 1st to 15th lessons on the essence on Dharma practices of the Tibetan Buddhism, we have covered how the post-death world works and some key points. Why mind training is so important. After knowing that life would continue to exist, along with various evidences, the next step is exactly about the problem of how to conduct Dharma practice. However, we misunderstand Dharma practice most of the time, thinking that through practicing special methods to make us fly, one can help oneself and so on. It is not like that. No matter what, we can fly after death and we don't need to learn that. In fact, the first important step for us is to know how to train our minds, but mind training is a very difficult part which would probably be misunderstood again. So we need to do it step by step and to set up the basis for mind training. When building the foundation of mind training, there is a series of procedures. The first foundation is to learn to judge right and wrong. For example, of all the behavioral actions, how can we distinguish what is right or what is wrong? It is not as easy as what we usually imagine it to be. What we need to learn now is to use wisdom to set up the foundation mind training. This mind training foundation has something to do with establishing criteria and standards of judgment of right and wrong in handling matters. Furthermore, it needs to meet 3 requirements. Firstly, it must be applicable to everyday life, including all behavioral actions. Secondly, it complies with the precepts. Thirdly, it can be infused in emptiness in the future. If I have already done so much, whether grasping at and holding on to the Dharma practice would mean successful achievement. The key in the third point exactly tells us to use wisdom wisely to integrate and merge the worldly and outer worldly laws of emptiness into worldly principles. Relative, worldly, truth represents the law of causes and effects. Absolute, outer worldly, truth represents emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. We have talked about that in our last lecture. We will continue this part in the following lecture. I mentioned a very famous professor before. The course he taught in Harvard University is a legend and it is called Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do? This famous professor is Michael Sandel and he is a well-known political philosopher in America and an academician in the American Academy. He is named one of the most popular teachers in this century. Last time I shared with you some video clippings about him on the YouTube website. The contents are worth watching, such as how he teaches these Harvard College students, training elites who might lead the world in the future. Answers from these college students are also worth paying attention to. I hope you all know how to think about these questions with Buddhist Dharma. When comparing their answers to our answers, we would know the thoughts of pure elites in the earthly world and what judgment and thought should a Buddhist have. Following the content in the last lecture, we talked about how the principle of killing one person to save 5 people would change. There are 2 levels of thinking, one of which is from the point of worldly law and the other is from Buddhist Dharma. In terms of worldly law, I brought up that Professor Sandel pointed out that when judging the right and wrong of matters, there are utilitarianism and absolutism. Utilitarianism means that when a matter fits the benefits of most people while sacrificing benefits of a small group of people, then it is doable. Or inconsequentialism, we use the imaginary results to support the behavioral action of making the decision. For example, I would estimate how many people I could save or how many people would immediately be saved and sacrificed under the current decision. Using consequence as a major decision-making factor is a form of utilitarianism. The other one is absolutism. Absolutism means that no matter how many people would be saved or how many people would be sacrificed, one only cares about principles. Anything that is against the principles is not doable. This is absolute. The Buddhist Dharma thinking we brought up is not only about utilitarianism and absolutism. Buddhist Dharma should be about how to use the law of causes and effects to deliberate and analyze matters. What are the causes and effects these people get for their behaviors and deeds? After analyzing, we need to consider further whether the behavioral action contravenes the precepts. Whether there can be precepts exception. For instance, whether he can be granted with precepts exception by saving a lot more people with only a few people being sacrificed. We know that precept's exception is not a casual matter. When we have a precept's exception, we still need to factor in bodhicitta, but even after adding bodhicitta, there still exists a gray area. Bodhicitta is not simply the case for killing a few people in exchange for the lives of many people. Then one can have precept's exception and it complies with the 3 requirements. In fact, it is not all like that. Then what is it to truly meet the 3 requirements? What we need to learn from it is exactly our today's topic. When we have struck a balance and solved matters, that is the wise and right way of doing things. If we, after having used the 3 requirements, and also applied the worldly utilitarianism and absolutism to solve problems, can't keep a balance, it is not a wise way of doing things, and it is wrong and with flaws. That is to say, we need to use the mind training perspective to establish the criteria and standards for judgment and handling matters in our daily life. So doing would enable us to judge right from wrong. Now it is time for you to answer questions. I just reviewed the key points in our last lecture. Maybe you start thinking that you know how to distinguish right and wrong, so now is to test whether you really understand it or not. I will apply the teaching method of Professor Michael Sandel to ask you questions taken from cases in the very popular online course taught by him in Harvard University. Please listen attentively to the question. The first question is about how we should choose right and wrong. The first question: suppose you were a duty doctor working in the emergency room. In one late night, 6 people, who got injured in an accident, were suddenly sent to your hospital at the same time. One of them was injured badly while the other 5 suffered from medium injury. Then you found out that there was no one in the emergency room other than you. Only you can save these people. After examining these few victims, your preliminary judgment was that it would take a whole night to bring the heavily injured person back to life, while the other 5 victims with medium injuries would die because of lack of treatment. On the contrary, if you spend the whole night to save these 5 victims with medium injuries, the heavily injured person would die because of lack of treatment. The question is that if you were the doctor, what would you choose? First choice, you could choose to save 5 and 1 would die, or you could choose to save 1, 5 would die. Let's see your answers. Let's see the first choice. Who would choose to save 5 and let 1 die? Please raise your hand. Looks like lots of you choose this one, thank you. Who would choose save 1 and let 5 die? Only 2 or 3 people, and one of them is a doctor. Only fewer people would choose it. We would continue on this. A lot of you chose to save 5 and let 1 die, but you need to explain why. What are your reasons? Let's see what are the reasons from the point of Buddhist Dharma, and we will compare them with reasons given by the Harvard University students, who are a group of elites in the future society. Those of you who chose to save 5 and let 1 die, what are your reasons? Because the families, relatives, and many related people of these 5 people would feel sad for them, but if saving 1, the number of sad people would be relatively fewer. Fun, thank you. In fact, all these are some calculations based on worldly utilitarianism and consequentialism. Saving 5 people would involve many more people from those 5 families than that of 1 family. This is the process of our calculation. Any other answer? If we calculate this according to the worldly laws, 5 is more than 1. However, when we think from the point of causes and effects, he would have to take the karmic retributions. If the seriously injured one ought to die, but the other people with less serious injury, brisk tone, should not die, then we should save those 5 people. Thank you. Do you have anything to add? Okay. You have adopted the law of causes and effects, and to see this from the point of Buddhist Dharma. You tried to extrapolate the causes and effects for these people and made decision by using your extrapolation to estimate his causes and results. You have thought this one level further. Other than utilitarianism, we also bring in the law of causes and effects in Buddhist Dharma. This is another angle. Anyone can supplement. For me, I would choose to save 5. My reason is similar to that of the Dharma sister who answered before me. There are 5 families behind these 5 people. The number of people in these 5 families is definitely more than that in 1 family. Meanwhile, when you have saved the first and the second one, they can plead to the Guru Master for help as soon as possible, seek people to give blessings and pray. The mind thoughts they generated would influence the magnetic field. Besides, they can also plead to the Dharma protectors to get more ways to save the last victims. You mean when saving these 5 people, at least after saving the first one, then the first one can assist me to save the second one. But if the person had medium injury, not minor injury, he wouldn't be able to help you immediately, even after you have saved him. Even that, there is still a ray of hope, and doing this means we have better chance of success. Besides, he could generate mind thoughts. It is really sad to face death, but they are not Buddhists and they are worldly people. Only you who are a doctor are a Buddhist. But when a worldly person faces a tragic situation, he would show his kind side and empathize with others. I think saving one would somehow give you added auxiliary force to help saving the second or the third one. Even when he emits good mind, at least it would help the magnetic field of the universe, although he can't help that dying friend now. From a long-term perspective, this method should be used. Thanks. Anything to add to your answer? That is pretty much all. Okay, please sit down. Your answer includes utilitarianism in the worldly law, as well as the law of causes and effects in Buddhist Dharma. You also added to-do precepts. As what I taught in the last lecture, for Dharma practitioners, there is a to-do precept which means something that one has to do. Some are called no-to-do precepts, meaning something that one can't do. There are 2 parts in terms of to-do precepts. More things need to be added, such as praying, wish-making to make the magnetic field better, to make things turn better. This is feasible. Why? Because in to-do precepts, other than praying, when you have treated one of them, you could talk to him, saying that, if you're feeling okay, you can help praying when you are not resting, because my ability alone is not enough to save others. I hope that your praying can help them extend their lives and make it through, thus giving me more time to save them, or waiting for someone else for more help. In fact, your praying is feasible. This is one of the factors for adding in the law of causes and effects. But what the professor wanted to ask and test is the direction of your choice. Whether you choose to save 5 and let 1 die, or to save 1 and let 5 die. What is your reason for your choice? Through the choices made by different people, he studied whether most people in society would follow principles when doing things and whether these principles would change from time to time. This is the focus of his study. I want to know, on the other side, although fewer people raised hands, their reasons for this choice of saving 1 and letting 5 die. Friends who just raised hands, please tell us what you think.
Hello, 2 Guru Masters. Being a doctor is not that free, and there are also principles in an emergency room. What are serious injuries and what are minor injuries? We need to triage them first. After differentiating them, we would treat them according to the levels of their injuries. However, we rarely do it reversely, to treat the minor injured one first, then the medium, and leave the serious injured patient the last, because normally speaking, in terms of success rate, to save patients with minor injury is of course good, as they can definitely be saved, and the chances of success in treating patients with medium injuries are also very good. But the chance of saving the seriously injured is not good, and it is in fact only half. The responsibilities of being a doctor are to rescue the dying and heal the wounded. How can I tell him that because you are seriously injured, I won't save you? I need to save the minor injured patients, and they can definitely be saved, but you are not. It is not a good way to explain your choice. The situation now is not about investment. If it is investment, we need to see which one has the better return. I will choose that one, but now we are talking about saving lives of people.
According to your judgment, if this professor wanted you to choose and gave you the specific situation, saying that it was quite certain of your assessment that if you spent the whole night in saving the seriously injured patient, the other 5 people would definitely die. This is the judgment that you already knew, which it is the same judgment you said just now. You can't say to the injured patient that not saving you is because you can't be saved.
Actually, in an emergency room, there wouldn't be only one doctor. There are nurses as well, who can monitor the patient's vital index. For example, when you are sent to the hospital, your vital index won't be too bad.
The professor's hypothesis now is not intended for you to find other factors in the setting. He is testing your wisdom, as well as your judgment. That is why, in the premise of his question, he assumed that you are on your own, so that you can't rely on anything else or say that you can't help out. In the question, he is testing your ability to judge. He wants you to make judgment and then analyze from your judgment.
But it is difficult to ascertain that those 5 people can be saved. You can save them. For example, A is seriously injured and B, C, D, E, F suffer from medium injuries.
He has made the judgment based on his professional knowledge. Assuming that your answer in this case is positive, if you spent the whole night saving the seriously injured one, he can definitely be saved. It is not like what you said that the chance is only half. The premise of the professor's question has been a hypothesis. The intelligence of this professor is how he designed the question. He can find the hypothesis of the question. It is not something that would definitely happen in real life, but he can test you, in a limited space, how you make your choice, so that he can further ascertain what is the logic behind your choice and see the thinking process clearly. However, later he would discuss some real-life cases. In the real-life situation, there are many different changes and he can still see the other side of your judgment right away. Why would I say that this is the initial stage to teach you the basis of mind training? Because like this professor, the thinking process is being set up first, so there are many confines and you needn't think too much. You are on your own in this case. Meanwhile, based on your professional knowledge, you know that with your abilities, after spending the whole night on the patient, you can definitely save him and the other 5 would die. You can also choose to save those 5 people and they would definitely be saved. Also, it is quite certain that the other 1 patient would die. How would you choose under such definite situation? Would you still choose to save 1?
Saving the seriously one.
That means saving 1, right? Then I'd want to ask you, is it because you are a doctor, there are the doctor's rules, or rules of the emergency room that you have to save the most seriously injured one first instead of doing things reversely to save the ones with medium injuries? Is it because of such rules, in order to comply with the rules and not breaking them, you have to make such a choice?
The hypothetical situation you talked about rarely happens in ordinary life. It is acceptable for exchange of views and discussions purely in lectures. If I have to make a choice, I believe in my subconscious, without much thinking, I would definitely do that. However, there is still room for exchange of views and thinking in discussion.
Actually, they of course understand, in a civilized society, how could there be only 1 doctor in the hospital, even in the late night? It could never happen. So what he tests is what principles people follow. There must be a principle in everyone's behavior pattern, directing you from within whether you should choose to go left or right and so on. He wants to let you see what your inner principles are like and then teach you from that, making you understand what is the right thing to do. Moreover, it gives you a comparison and tries to help you understand yourself better. Is there anything else you want to add? Guru Master, I want to ask, if these 5 people were saved and they prayed together, would it help the other one to survive? This is a hypothesis we added as we are learning Buddhist Dharma. But in the professor's question of this hypothetical case, such an extra similar assumption can't be added, because in our earthly world, the number of Buddhists is fewer. Everyone can have different religious belief. For instance, the 5 people you saved can be Catholic, Christian, or believers of other religions. Of course, different religious believers have their own ways of praying to their respective gods. You could say that no matter what religious belief you have, you can still help praying. It is a feasible way to put this, and there will be forces of praying, but we can't assume that praying would definitely work.
Because in our world, it is much more difficult for the magnetic field's impacts to be able to turn the real substances. In our earthly realm, as the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni said about the reason for Dharma practice. Because of the rough materials in our 3 realms to confine us in this world, it is very difficult to get out. Even we apply a high-level magnetic field to cast influence, it would be a slow and indirect way and is not necessarily workable.
So the Dharma practice we need to learn is to help us transform ourselves in such environment. We can't solely rely on those conditions. Although there is auxiliary force, it can't be a definite way to save a dying person. The combined praying efforts of the 5 don't equal to the successful rescue of the other seriously injured patient. It's never an absolute result. You could try your best to pray and hope that it would help him. This is feasible but doesn't equal to success. Guru Master. Hello. I would like to ask, what if that person's influence is larger than that of one family? What would happen then? Maybe he was recognized as the greatest president in this world, or a very influential and merciful savior, or a big philanthropist. No doubt that he had very great influence. Unless he had such a great title that the doctor could recognize him. Otherwise, under urgent situation, the doctor wouldn't spend much time to find out his background, so there is no such hypothesis in the question. If the professor intended to give specific assumption, he would have mentioned in this case that this man is a celebrity with what sort of contributions he has made to the world. Now we need to assume that they are all ordinary people in the case, which aims to see what principles you use to judge under this simple hypothesis, like utilitarianism or consequentialism in earthy world. The other one is absolutism, which only cares about principles. He hoped to use such simple case to test everyone. When faced with major life and death situation, whether they would continue to apply absolutism or use utilitarianism to make choice, while it helps you see yourself clearly and understand how you make choices in life. For example, some people would follow absolutism in whatever things they do, without considering utilitarianism. On the other hand, some would only think about utilitarianism and some consider both. The professor designed the question to enable the respondents to review their principles for handling matters, and I am teaching you how to view this from the Buddhist Dharma perspective. No matter you apply absolutism or utilitarianism, you need to factor in the views from Buddhist Dharma, precepts, and Bodhisattva. Under the circumstance that you can't find the balance, wisdom is an important part. But before you know about that, you need to see yourself clearly first. The question is exactly like a mirror. This is one of the intents for designing such question.
To answer this hypothetical question, I am a man of utilitarianism. I had attended some guiding courses on medical care for doctors. These doctors actually have their principles. When 2 patients or injured persons are sent to the hospital, doctors would see which one is relatively weaker and which one is older. They may not save a particular patient after all kinds of comparison. In fact, a doctor has his own guiding principles to determine his choice. It is possible that the patient who is saved ends up with coma. So each doctor has his own rules, and we can only know that in real life. For example, a military doctor would make a reasonable choice when he has actually observed 6 wounded soldiers in real situation. It is easier to make judgment under such circumstances.
Thank you. Your proposal is quite good. Our friend has made a very clear point just now. If the design of the case doesn't have much to do with our daily life, the controversy can be solved more easily.
2 Guru Masters. Hello. My personal choice is different from that of last time. For me, I would choose to save that 5 people, and sacrifice the other one.
What is your reason?
Just like what the Dharma brother has said, the situation in the hospital is confined to certain rules. As a Buddhist disciple who is learning Buddhist Dharma, and from my shallow knowledge of Buddhist Dharma, I think that there is only one person seriously injured, and I have the control of how to handle this. Even if I had saved the seriously injured person, he or she may become handicapped afterwards or be left with some complications that would affect his livelihood in the future. But if saving these 5 people with medium injuries, the contributions would be more for themselves and the society. Within my limited Buddhist Dharma knowledge, I know there are prerequisites for learning Buddhist Dharma. For example, becoming handicapped would pose a lot of obstacles in learning Buddhist Dharma. Moreover, those 5 people who only had medium injuries, are still able to live by their own after being saved.
Thank you. One more student. 2 Guru Master. Hello. I chose A because of the code of practice for doctor and nursing staff. Saving the seriously injured patient is the first. You have chosen A, which is to save 5 and let 1 die. Do you mean to choose B? Yes. It is B. Saving one and let five die. It is because the code of practice for doctor and nursing staff is like an oath. I can't break my oath. This is my personal opinion. I also understand there are other kinds of thinking that can be added in, but I can't let go of my conscience. Now let's see. There are two great isms in the world. If choosing utilitarianism, it is a principle that you put the benefits of most people first. If choosing absolutism, it means you put the benefit of the seriously injured person or more critical patient first. It is like what you just said. If you are a doctor or nurse, there are rules in the medical side in the hospital that you need to follow. These rules stipulate that the seriously injured and patients of critical condition are priority, instead of putting the benefits of more people first. The two isms are divided, which are utilitarianism and absolutism. If you were a doctor or a nurse, as long as you worked in a hospital, no matter whether you are of utilitarianism or absolutism, you have an oath, which once taken, you have vowed to do your job diligently. That means to be a person of absolutism and do everything according to the rules of hospital. If without these rules, you would notice that ordinary people do not have such knowledge, nor any vows to perform certain duties, nor any rules to follow. Most people would choose utilitarianism at that time. That is to say, in our society, most people would apply utilitarianism to judge right and wrong. Only a small number of people would choose absolutism because they have professional knowledge to compel them to make such choices, but it is only a small number of people. But what we see now is the choice of most people. Whether the principle of saving five and letting one die is right or not, or in the reverse way, whether the principle of saving one and letting five die is a definite choice, no matter what choice you make between these two, would the people who make the choice change or not? Let's see. Now the professor asked another question. Suppose you were an organ transplant doctor. There were 5 dying patients. One of them needed a heart, one needed a liver, one needed a kidney, one needed a pancreas, and one needed a lung, but there were no donors at the moment. The doctor was watching these 2 dying patients who needed treatment as soon as possible. The doctor knew that there was a person in the next room who was taking a regular body checkup and was sleeping. He knew that he could walk in that room quietly, take 5 healthy organs from that person and give them to these 5 patients. The professor asked the question to let you review your own principle again. If given you such hypothesis, what would you choose? First choice, you would choose to save 5 and let 1 die, meaning that you would give the 5 organs of this healthy person to those 5 dying people, because only immediate organ transplant can save their lives. Or you could choose the second choice, letting 5 patients die, regardless of the life and death of those 5 people. Saving one person should mean not killing him and spare his life. Now raise your hand if you choose to save 5 and let 1 die. No one raised hand. It is the same situation in the video clipping of Harvard University class. 1 or 2 people there seemed to raise their hands. If you listen to their reasons on YouTube, you would be surprised. Okay, if you choose B, not killing that healthy person and sparing his life but letting 5 patients die, please raise your hand. N. Most people choose this one. Let's continue to analyze and explain the reasons. Why in our last question, you are obviously the people of utilitarianism saying that it is a good choice to save 5 and let 1 die. Why is it that when the setting is changed, you changed your choice? I want to know your reasons, why you would change.
Guru Master, actually I want to say that if the doctor took away the heart, liver, and other organs of this person to save these 5 people, then when the soul of this dead person comes out, it would see how terrible this doctor is to take away his organs. He seems to be very upset. It is the law of causes of effects. Then after the doctor dies, that person would find him.
He would look for him life after life to take away his organs.
But the doctor took away these organs and transplanted them to these 5 people. These 5 people would be grateful and pay him debts of gratitude after death. You were saying that they would pay debts of gratitude to the doctor. But the one whose organs were taken away would probably know that the doctor did that to save other people and forgive him.
Then, that means in the law of causes and effects, there includes gratitude and vengeance. What you have done can't be balanced and it won't be balanced. As I have just said, that is lack of wisdom. Okay? Any supplement? I want to know why you would change your choice. That principle, why would you change that?
Actually, it is the same situation as the case of pushing the fat guy down last time. It is because you didn't ask for the consent of the fat guy. Same as the one lying in the hospital, that doctor didn't wake him up to ask whether he is willing to sacrifice himself.
Then you need to consider carefully how you see this thing in Buddhist Dharma. Does it mean you can do it if that person gave his consent? You need to pay attention to this point, whether it is acceptable in the precepts of Buddhist Dharma. If you were the doctor, there is no way that you didn't know that if you do that, he would die. How could someone not die if the heart and lung were taken out? This is an essential condition. Even if he is willing to do that, does it mean that the doctor can do that?
Not necessarily.
This is what you need to understand. I want you to understand that in some great areas, you can't tell right from wrong. It is because too many things have been added to it. If he is willing to do that, why not I just change the principle? You think again more carefully. It is just a change of setting and your principle change immediately. So every time when you change your principle, you need to take notice of why you would change that, why you would change so easily. Is it right to do that? This is why you need the Buddhist Dharma we teach and to see from the point of Buddhist Dharma. Thank you. Thank you for your opinions because whether you agree or not is very important. The professor also said that it is a thing requires close study.
Hello, I would choose to let that man go. My reason is that if those 5 people die, I didn't save them and I didn't break precepts either, because I didn't murder them. But for the other person, if I took organs from a healthy person like him, this is intentional murder and it would also be precept violation. Not saving these 5 people doesn't constitute precept violation, because the condition has arisen that they are in need of major organs. And it is difficult to find organ donors in a short period of time. Why no organ donors show up? It is fundamentally that the condition has ripened for them to die. From the point of Buddhist Dharma, I have neither broken the precept nor wanted to break precept. This is the vital point of how I do things.
This is a very good point and it is exactly like that. Anything else you want to add? That is a very good answer just now. So let's see. Our principle of utilitarianism changed from a choice taken by many people to a choice that no one would make. On the other hand, absolutism changed from a choice of 3 people to a choice of most people now. That makes us realize that some principles we use to judge right and wrong in fact can have great changes. Meanwhile, we also know that our behavioral actions can't be determined by consequences. That is to say, we can't only consider the result, then to cut off a person to save the other 5. This is not a situation that can be determined by results. The calculation methods of consequentialism or utilitarianism and so on, is not a most appropriate way to judge behavioral actions. Secondly, behavioral action itself is standardized by the moral concepts in absolutism. That is to say, when we make judgment in daily lives, some people would only use utilitarianism and don't know how to be flexible, while some constantly apply absolutism without considering precepts exception. Some other people occasionally follow one of the two. Even when a person is of utilitarianism, he would sometimes standardize his behavioral actions because of the moral concepts in absolutism. In our lives, there is actually a thing called gray area. When we don't know whether to use utilitarianism or absolutism, we can't make a decision. Judging from our situation just now, most people are of utilitarianism. But he would still abide by the principle of absolutism and subject to its standard. Some are people of absolutism who think that they are not subject to any influence, not being influenced by the concepts of utilitarianism, just keep going straight ahead with no swerving, no intention for precepts exception, then they wouldn't be connected to utilitarianism and wouldn't calculate. But from the test, we know of an important point, which is our behavioral action can't be determined by results. Now the question is, how do we keep to do precepts with wisdom? What should we do in respect of the Buddhist Dharma? As I said before, when we can infuse wisdom in our handling of matters and achieving a balance, it is the right thing to do. But under some circumstances, when choosing either this or that does not seem to work and we can't have a balance, then what should we do? First of all, let's see in the case of the emergency room on saving 5 and let 1 die. From the law of causes and effects, we can see clearly that without organs transplant these people would die. Yet I am not the one to kill them and I didn't break precepts nor the law. However, if I kill a person to save these 5 people, I would break the precepts and the law. In terms of organs donation, there is reason to explain that. But in an emergency room, there is nobody there to monitor, though there are certain rules governing a doctor to save the one with serious injuries first, instead of doing thing reversely to save these 5 people first. In fact, in the emergency room case, there is very little difference between saving 5 or 1. Even if you have saved these 5 people, no one would blame you for breaking the precepts or the law because of the death of another person, or accuse you of having killed someone to throw you in jail. The result is that even under such an ambiguous situation, there are still many people choose to save 5 and let 1 die. We could see this again from the law of causes and effects. The dead and his families would probably resent you for not saving him. Probably means that only you know that he could be saved, but if you don't tell them, they wouldn't know. You wouldn't tell them that you have made a judgment that if you spent the whole night treating him, you could save him. You wouldn't tell them about this because you have already made a decision to give him up. If you tell them that, it would only increase their resentment, so usually you wouldn't say that. However, the families could know the truth after death. Many records indicate that there is space for storage. They could know after checking that you had actually the abilities to save him. They also know that you made a judgment to give him up, so in the end, the dead and his families would take revenge. They might not have that much of hatred at that moment. However, as time goes by, when the incident fades out, there would be less hatred and they might not take revenge, but it is still possible that they would take revenge. On the other side, the 5 people being saved and their families would be grateful. Besides, you would have won multiple times of not being saved when you suffer from serious injury. You would be sacrificed because that is the retribution you have to take, and you may feel guilty for not saving that person. Actually, when you make a choice, it is a test and it is not an easy thing to deal with, especially in some great areas. There is no clear division. If you use the law of causes and effects to think, no matter what you choose, there will be different karmic retributions, both good ones and bad ones. But is there any way for us to balance all of that? There can't be a third choice, for example, not to save all the 6 people and give up making any choice. So you must make a choice. How do we make other considerations from the point of precepts and bodhicitta? In the precepts, there is no stipulation for you to save the most seriously injured one, or to save most people, or to save the closest and dearest one. However, precepts have stipulated that when you have made a vow to some people or some organizations and you don't honor it, it would constitute precept violation. That is why if you were a doctor or a nurse, who have made a vow to save the dying first and then to help the injured, but you didn't follow that and saved the 5 persons with medium injuries first and sacrificed 1 person instead, it would be a precept violation. The dead and his families would know the truth in the future. They would know that you have broken your oath. They would think that you are even more sinful because you made an oath and then broke it. You are not only in debt of his life, but committed more wrongdoing. If you were a doctor who knew nothing about precepts and didn't even know that you've already broken the precept, then you wouldn't feel to be bound by any requirements. Regarding the bodhicitta, you think it is right thing to do, because so far you only sacrifice 1 to save 5 people. It is right in terms of bodhicitta. This is what we call a gray area. But when one faced with this situation or has already made a similar choice, like that student said about the situation on the battlefield, you are not a doctor and you didn't make a vow, but you have made a choice and done it. Coming back to the question of balance again, How should we keep to-do precepts? Actually, as a student has just mentioned, you need to explain, apologize, and even praise and exclaim to the dead body afterwards. It is better to do it soon to comfort his mind before his mind leaves. It would be a thank you for him that although you were injured seriously, there were 5 other people with medium injuries. My heart has affection for you and I don't want you to go. To share how difficult it is for you to make a decision in your mind and ask him not to misunderstand you. I didn't mean to give up on you. You have to apologize to him and ask him not to get angry, hoping that he has a pleasing heart to know that your sacrifice has helped other 5 people in this world. It is also hoped that you would understand it was you and me who have jointly saved the lives of these people. The credit does not belong to me alone, it also goes to you. Expressing gratitude and praise is exactly what you need to do to comfort him, letting him understand that his sacrifice is worthwhile, and hope that he would go to a better place or give him blessings for his experience in afterlife. Besides, you also need to make a promise to him that you would say some comforting words to his families but not the truth. Although you are a Buddhist, you couldn't say everything in total honesty. For example, you couldn't directly say that someone is very ugly. Yes, you do not say any false words, which is also one of the precepts to observe. Even you can't speak the truth, you still need to confess and explain to the deceased first. Because if I tell your families that I could have saved you but I didn't do that, I am not afraid nor mind that they would be angry with me, but it might multiply their pains of losing you or even more. The feelings of hatred and pain for them are a kind of suffering and torture. I would never want to add salt to their wounds of losing you, making them even more painful. So I decided not to say that, but I would apologize to you with my sincere heart. If your families know about the truth and future, I wouldn't mind apologizing to them again because I really feel remorseful, but I'm obliged to do this. It wasn't because I don't love you or abandon you. These are all that you need to do. The best and the most direct way is to explain to the dead body of the deceased, telling him the reasons and results, offering your apologies, praise, and gratitude so as to make him feel about the credits of saving 5 lives. It may also let him understand that his life is doomed to end, help him to see it with openness to let go of his hatred. More importantly, it is to let him know that his death has value and he should go to a better place with hope. That is why you can see those morticians who do makeup for the deceased, those who dispose dead bodies, and the medical staff. They are all very respectful to the dead bodies every time they handle them and they are never sloppy. I have been to a rather undeveloped country. I found that they didn't respect the dead bodies in the morgue. In that place, they didn't put each body in coffin but stack one body on top of the other and all of the deceased were naked. It is an unrespectable way to treat the deceased. If you have seen that, you would become so frustrated at that moment, realizing that the respect for people is like treating garbage. Don't think that dialogue becomes meaningless because people have died. They become a dead body and you don't say anything. It is actually necessary. You should know this. Especially as a Buddhist follower and Buddhist Dharma practitioner, when you face his dead body, it is just the same way you faced him when he was alive. Say what you should say and do what you should do. The first thing that the Buddhists should do is to balance things. Secondly, after the incident, make wish praying for the deceased, do Dharma practice and dedicate all merits. All these can be done independently. Thirdly, if families of the deceased have grievances, you need to explain and apologize to them, explaining to them that I really wanted to save him. The fact that I couldn't save him in the end had upset me. This is the only way to put it. You can never say to them, actually if I didn't save those 5 people, I could have saved him. The fact is that I have chosen to save these 5 people instead of him. You can't say that. Do you understand? It is not counted as speaking false words. This is the to-do precepts you need to keep. In the picture, do you see a judge or that goddess, a goddess of justice and equality with her eyes covered? Actually, as a person, we usually have to make a lot of judgments in life without knowing that we are acting like judges ourselves. When we are making a choice for our behavioral actions, we are judges for ourselves. There are two meanings of covering the eyes. You can say it is the symbol of equality, without seeing something with greed, anger, and ignorance, and to judge matters based purely on conscience, or it can be seen as a kind of blindness, meaning that you always use your own way to deal with matters without considering other angles. It may be blindness. You need to remember, when you find things imbalanced, no matter what you choose, under the law of causes and effects, there would be good and bad karmic retributions, and imbalance has already appeared. At that time, how should we resolve it? At this point, there are some to-do precepts, something we should do and extra things to do. Under the imbalanced and remorseful situation, other than making compensation and apology, there are wish praying, dharma practice and merits dedication that we should do. All these are what we called wisdom, which means to try to balance things. But you may ask, after doing all these but still can't make a balance. However, you need to know, as a dharma practitioner, what you need to do is to try your best. There is no way we can twist and turn the retributions in causes and effects. As what a student has said, that person is supposed to die because he has been suffering from serious injury. It had nothing to do with me. The thoughts at this time should be focused on the law of causes and effects. You should think about what the causes and effects for these 6 victims instead of the causes and effects of the doctor. You should make judgments according to the victim's situation. As Dharma practitioners, whether to factor in other people's causes and effects in your judgment is exactly what you need to learn. When to do the assessment and when not to do, whether the precepts allow us to do that, that is what we need to know, and there involves one key point in it. If doing that, whether your mind nature and others' mind nature would elevate or descend, if upholding this one key point to make judgment, it won't go wrong. The chance of getting wrong is very slim, and the regrets for making mistakes are very little. You need to remember this criterion. Whether you know how to use that after learning that, there is a real-life case later to test you. Now the focus is on whether the mind nature would elevate or descend. That is to say, if after you made compensation like this, it could make yourself, the deceased and his families in the future feel consoled in their mind nature because you have made such compensation, wish praying, and dharma practice. It would be like as if the deceased has participated in the process of saving those 5 people and it is worthy of it. In this way, the mind nature would improve. The doctor didn't abandon me, he praised me, approved of me and considered me as a great person. This would make the mind nature of the deceased elevated, facilitating him to go to a better direction. After the doctor has done that, his mind nature would become less remorseful and also elevated. So in this incident, we can only do our best. Whether it is 100% right and whether it can be compensated up to 100%, would depend on how much you have done and scored. If you have done 100%, then there would be 100 scores. If you have done 80% with no words of praise and fewer dharma practices and merits dedication and so on, then you wouldn't have 100 scores. Of course, I can't guarantee you to get a result of 100 scores for doing 100%, but it is still up to what you have done, and that is also wisdom. In the case mentioned in the last episode, if you swerve the tram car to turn sideways, under the situation of killing 1 person intentionally, you can save the lives of 5 people. At that time, someone brought up, I would have thought that these 6 people, considering their karmic retributions, if I go straight ahead and kill these 5 people, it would be that they are supposed to die because my tram car is supposed to go straight ahead. Meanwhile, the other person is on the side track and I am not supposed to hit him. Then why would I have to swerve deliberately to kill him? I am the one who changed the causes and effects of a person who is not supposed to die. It is wrong to change the causes and effects of other people, because I think that those 5 people are supposed to die. Therefore, I think that doing this would violate the law of causes and effects. This is a question raised by a friend in the last lecture. Let's talk about the views from the point of precepts and bodhisattva. My question now is for your choice. If you are to save people and you only have 5 seconds to decide whether to save or not, it is a very short period of time, not 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or a month to consider what to do, and the decision must be made immediately. One of the purposes why the professor would design the question like that is to let you make a decision under an urgent situation right away, forcing you to make a decision from which one can see your own behavioral formula and programming and what ism you hold on to, forcing to reveal the real side of you. That is why he didn't give you time to think about. Okay, now give yourself some time to think. The question has changed. If you adding consciousness in your choice, I would think about the causes and effects of this person whenever I save people in future. I would think whether he is worth saving or not. That means under crisis, you are still the same, or you just go straight ahead without thinking. So my question is that would you calculate whether this person worth saving or not when you are saving them, whether it conforms to the precepts and bodhisattva or not, because this question is one that combines the precepts and bodhisattva together, and is not a question made under the law of causes and effect. Would you choose to calculate or not? Those who choose to calculate, please raise your hand. 1. Then those who choose not to calculate, please raise your hand. Many people. N. These people have foundational basis of Buddhist Dharma and good bodhisattva. Let me tell you that, as Dharma practitioners, we need to observe precepts. Precepts stipulate that I have to help people, save people. Precepts do not point out that when helping people, we need to consider whether it is worth it or not. It is because precepts don't point this out, we sometimes find it confusing to observe the precepts. For example, in front of you is a dying murderer who said he has a cardio medicine pill in his pocket and asked you to help take it out for him to swallow. But the person before you is a murderer who has killed 100 people. His death would have served him and he deserved to die. How would you save him? While you were considering this, he died already. But actually, the precepts have no such stipulation. According to Bodhisattva, we have to save good people, but it doesn't say that we don't have to save bad people. It only says that we have to be good people. You need to note that we only consider the present, that means right now. Under the present situation and from the point of precepts and bodhisattva, I should save the persons and wouldn't need to extrapolate the causes and effects of that person, because the result of extrapolation could be wrong, and when you make a wrong extrapolation, you need to bear the causes and effects of your own mistakes, that is treating someone unjustly. For example, his face was unrecognizable and he was not the murderer who has killed 100 people. It is only that he looked like that killer. You misidentified him as that killer and decided not to save him. It turned out that he wasn't a killer. Then he would haunt you after death, blaming you for not saving him when he begged for your help. Firstly, you are a person who doesn't save people from danger and yet you called yourself a Buddhist. Secondly, you misidentified me as a killer. Dharma practitioners shouldn't make calculation. But now, you make a decision to save a person or not based on extrapolation and calculations. This is even more sinful and you would have to bear one more karmic retribution. Therefore, under precepts and bodhisattva, what you should care about now is to save that person because that person is dying in front of you, rather than thinking about his past. In terms of time, you don't have much time to think more about what happened in the past. In terms of space, you need to add in precepts and the bodhisattva mind. All these are to drive you to make a decision to save that person now, instead of giving some time and space to let you think about others' past. Secondly, what you should consider is the individual's causes and effects. When we have 3 things to think about, the first one is the law of causes and effects. Whether we should save 1 and let 5 die, or save 5 and let 1 die, and what will be the possible causes and effects for doing them. However, we can't think from the point of utilitarianism. For example, saving 5 will get you more debts of gratitude in the future while saving 1 would be less. We don't apply utilitarianism but precepts and bodhisattva. That is to say, You should care about the little more happiness of 5 families that would benefit more people instead of thinking about your own benefits. It would be different between precepts and bodhisattva. Under the law of causes and effects, it should be to care for someone else's benefits instead of putting your own benefits first. It is not to think about your own causes and effects. In other words, even if 1 million people come in front of me, and they all resent me, but as long as it complies with the precepts, I would still choose precepts. Another point you need to take notice of is that, under the precepts and bodhisattva, but not the law of causes and effects, if you only think about your own causes and effects, and observe the precepts of persuasion, it would still be a precept violation if you don't do what you should do. It would also make me get what retributions I deserve, and I won't succeed in my Dharma practice to reach the Buddha land, and some supreme bodhisattvas wouldn't like me, thinking that I have done something wrong. This is the causes and effects for thinking about your own without thinking about the causes and effects of others. For example, that person is supposed to die, why should I save him, and so on. You don't need to consider the causes and effects of others. Thirdly, only to think about your own precepts, because the precepts taken by each individual could be different. For example, one takes the bhiksha precepts while another one takes the bhikshunai precepts. There could also be the precepts for laymen. They are different. Take me as an example. I have taken the bodhisattva's precepts but others haven't. When there are different precepts, you can't guess the precepts of the person being saved. He has his own precepts and shouldn't blame me. He should observe his own precepts. The person who was killed by the swerve of the trankar should know that he would be sacrificed and to observe the bodhisattva's precepts. Even we can't guess someone else's precepts, we should only think about what precepts I should observe and what I should do. Fourthly, only thinking about your own bodhisattva. For example, if you have saved someone with 100% of bodhisattva but he only pays your debts of gratitude with 10% of bodhisattva and you think that he is terrible, this is absolutely unacceptable. Also, you can't ask your Dharma brothers to follow your standard after you have given out 100% of bodhisattva, because you must remember that Dharma practice is your own business and it is you who make the decision, not someone else. You only need to think about your own bodhisattva and give out as much of it as you can. If the one who killed that person by swerving the tramcar takes accountability for this life under bodhisattva, he should ask himself whether he has the ability to take such responsibility and is willing to bear such retribution. This is a personal decision and individual's own Dharma practice. The Dharma practice and matters of an individual should take personal precepts and bodhisattva into consideration. Seventhly, you can't use supernatural power and extrapolation to do things, like some people who try to extrapolate people when they only know little about supernatural power. Only the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni can see through the causes and effects of sentient being in infinite lifetimes. Anybody, even for arhats, can only see causes and effects of some people within 500 lifetimes, which mean that they can't see all. If you can't see all, it means you only interpret out of context and it would have the chance to go wrong. Your bodhisattva would be reduced because of that. Those people who rely on supernatural power see things like watching TV series. They only take out one episode and watch it without knowing what happened before and after. Then the causes and effects would be messed up and there would be confusion. So you can't use supernatural power even if you have it. If you don't have it, you can't extrapolate, because it would reduce your bodhisattva, making you think that this person is not worth saving because he is not good, which will then make your bodhisattva not good. Eighthly, you must remember that there is no absolute answer. As what professor has said, studying philosophy is of a very great risk because it would break all your ideas and concepts and build a new concept. If the concepts being built were good, you would be a good person, and if unfortunately the concepts built were not good, you would become a very wicked person. This is what the risk lies in. Also, you may turn insane because you're lacking absolute right and wrong in concept and therefore fall into chaos. However, what we're learning is Buddhist Dharma but not philosophy. I can tell you explicitly what to do is right and what to do is wrong. Yet when you are in a great area, You have a cause and effect to bear. Please remember, first of all, to acknowledge to yourself that there are good and bad karmic retributions. Secondly, if there are enough reasons for me to have precepts exception, otherwise you should observe the precepts and don't have precepts exception casually. This is what you need to weigh in. There are differences among each individual. Whether you are a Dharma practitioner or not, whether you have taken the precepts or not, whether you have bodhicitta or not, whether you have wisdom or not. According to these differences, your behavior and deeds should be different. The reason why we need to learn Buddhist Dharma is that we need to acquire wisdom. For example, when you have to choose one from two options, even when they are both bad options, then how can we make compensation with to do precepts? This is the Buddhist Dharma learning and wisdom, and also enables us as Buddhist Dharma learners to balance the imperfections in the earthly world. However, you need to know and understand that there is nothing absolute, but only relative. Only when you have attained Buddhahood and completely infused in the Buddha world, that moment would be absolute. But in the realm of desire, everything is capricious, so nothing is absolute by its own, only relative, and is interactive towards certain matters. You also have to remember, within the causes and effects you choose, especially in the gray area, you have no ability to tell yourself whether you are absolutely right or wrong. Only part of it is wrong and part of it is right. You can utilize your wisdom to make up for the wrong part and expand the right part. This is what you can do. Tenthly, it is the most important key point in this lecture, which is also the key to judge the case later in the lecture. No matter you understand or not, it has been taught. It all concerns whether the mind nature would elevate or descend. Using the elevation or descent of the mind nature to determine right and wrong. If your behavioral actions make your and others' mind nature elevate, then they are the right behaviors and deeds. If your behavioral actions make your and others' mind nature descend, they are the wrong behaviors and deeds. Besides, you can't make choice based on your calculation of the results. Consequentialism will cause you make mistakes often and impede your Dharma practice as well as let you forget precepts because your focus is already placed on the number of 5 people. While bodhicitta could sometimes lead to wrong calculation and there are chances of misplacement of causes and effects. If applying utilitarianism, it would make you forget precepts and deceive yourself and others to have put things right, leading to reduction of bodhicitta and confusion in the law of causes and effects. Therefore, I myself also observe my disciples' mind nature in this way for adjustment and teaching. You would know that when you analyze the case later. Okay? That is to say, to use our wisdom to set up the mind training foundation. And the mind training foundation is about some criteria to make judgment and deal with matters. The first step is to distinguish right and wrong, then to see if the mind nature would elevate or descend before making a decision for behavioral actions. The influence of this mind nature is really big because elevation or descent of mind nature would affect your rebirth and destiny. This is the key point to decide all behavioral actions. So do you think you can be a referee now? If after hearing what was said just now and you think that you can be a referee, then let's get started together. This is a question about the principle to choose to save more and let fewer die, another time for you to make a choice. This is a real-life case. It is the lawsuit of the Queen of England versus Dudley and Stevens. It is a well-known lawsuit case in the world and this case has been debated in every law school and that famous professor in Harvard University also used this case for discussion. Now I would also use this case to teach you a deeper level of Buddhist Dharma from this level and point of view. I have given you some hints. Like the students of all law schools around the world, you also have to give, on this case. You can review and debate on this case. Imagine that you were one of the jury. In 1884, a lifeboat called Mignonette was found in the South Atlantic, 13,000 miles from the Cape. This boat did exist and it is now kept in a museum. The captain was called Dudley, a crew member was called Stevens, the sailor was called Brooks and the cabin boy was called Parker. Parker at that time was a 17-year-old orphan on his first voyage in sea. Unfortunately, the yacht wrecked and the 4 people got on the lifeboat called Mignonette. The only food they had were 2 cans of preserved turnip, but no drinking water. During the first 3 days, they didn't eat any 1 can of the preserved turnip and hoped that a ship would pass by and save them. On the 4th day, they ate a can of preserved turnip. On the 5th day, they caught a turtle and ate it, remaining only 1 can of turnip. In the following 8 days, they didn't eat anything or drink any water. Yet, Parker didn't heed the advice and he drank a little bit of seawater, which caused him dehydrated and sick. He was very weak, lying in the cummer of the boat. On the 19th day, Dudley suggested drawing lots to decide who should die first in order to save others. What he meant was to kill that person, drink his blood to quench thirst and eat his flesh for food to keep alive. Brooks opposed to this proposal. But for unknown reason, there was no lots drawing in the end. On the 20th day, there was still no ship, so the captain suggested Brooks not to look at Parker's side, but he didn't give any reason. Then he talked to Stevens about sacrificing Parker because he was already weak and he drank seawater regardless of their advice. However, at this moment, Dudley made a prayer. Attention! When you made a decision with imperfection that makes you feel remorseful, ashamed, and guilty, he should start to make compensation, wish praying, practice dharma, and merits dedication as I have said. So let's see if it is feasible in this real-life case. He then made a prayer for Parker, saying that your time has come and why not sacrificing yourself to save us. After explaining the reason to him, he cut the jugular vein on Parker's neck with the penknife to kill him. He died afterwards. Among these 3 people, Brooks opposed the idea and thought that it was cruel, so the captain told him not to look at Parker. However, he even joined the other to drink blood and eat flesh. All 3 of them did that. Although Brooks felt uneasy, he did the same thing as Dudley and Stevens did. On the 20th day, they killed Parker and they held on for 4 days with Parker's body. On the 24th day, these 3 people were rescued. In Dudley's diary, he wrote, "When I was having my breakfast, a ship appeared, so this German ship saved them and took them back to England. When they were back to their home country, a trial proceeded immediately. The Queen of England charged these 2 people. Brooks became a witness and Dudley and Stevens were trialed. These 3 people didn't deny their behavioral action, but they said they didn't do anything wrong. Their argument was that they acted out of necessity and they didn't have a choice. It is the right thing to sacrifice 1 person to save other 3. Now I want to ask you, what is your verdict?" Of course I wouldn't tell you the verdicts at that time. Please raise your hand if you think these 2 people should be acquitted. 1, 2, 3. N. Okay, those who opt that these 2 persons should be found guilty, please raise your hand. N. Lots of you choose this one. Let's continue to see this. You would notice that most of them gave a guilty verdict. The students in Harvard University also thought so. I often say that things need explanations. Before we see what the reasons given by Harvard University students, I want to listen to your reasons. There were 2 people who have chosen to acquit them. What are your reasons for releasing them without laying charges? 2 Guru Masters, after listening to what you have just said, it is acceptable to kill 1 to save 3 if out of bodhicitta. Moreover, Parker was an orphan and he didn't have any family members. But when you make this judgment, you are neither the victim nor beneficiary. That means even you think he is selfish, you still agree that it was a right thing to do. Because I think the killer himself thought he was right. Are you saying that you think it is right to kill him in order to save yourself? Because the killer said killing him can save 3 lives. Okay, thanks. The other one who chose to acquit them, why?
Because the killer has prayed and made compensation, also because he was already sick. He would die no matter what, so why not saving the other 3 people? Firstly, he was an orphan and someone has prayed for him. I'm not saying that it is not wrong. It is just less wrong.
But the law schools around the world, even the most famous one, would debate on this case and it is a heated debate. The present society is also the same in taking this as a standard.
I still think that he is innocent.
Okay? You think he is innocent from legal point. I would like to ask students who think that they are guilty to tell us a reason. To Guru Masters. Hello. I think they are guilty because he was just weak and sick. It didn't mean that he has died already. Maybe he would come around at some point. If he was just weak and sick and couldn't recover, why not wait for one more day and eat him when he was totally dead? That would feel less troubled. Afterwards, they could pray for him, letting him know that his flesh could save them. Compared to killing him, there was at least one less resentful mind. And there is no way to know for sure whether he could recover tomorrow. Any supplement to his answer, I think it is impermissible from the points of the laws, humanity, Buddhist dharma, and judgment on handling matters, because it showed no respect for that people. It would not be acceptable for any ordinary people. It was his life and it was not for you to make a choice. Doing it is unrespectable. In terms of Buddhist dharma, it is even more impermissible because he has accumulated long-time gratitude and hatred with you. In terms of bodhisattva, there should be other better way at that time, better than to abandon him. Is there any other way to show him more respect and to respect his will? That is the biggest problem. What you said is right. A lot of Harvard students said the same thing. I would give you some more choices.
I think it is in fact a good way to draw lots as the captain proposed before. They didn't do that because Brooks opposed to it, but later he broke his own principles to eat his flesh. He could actually decide to do that at first. Besides, it was also the captain's responsibility. He could decide to kill the orphan by himself, but he wasn't determined to take action. However, he later said that he took breakfast. It was highly disrespectful to the deceased. Even though he had prayed for him with a kind heart, he didn't follow through. His kindness and his selfishness overrides everything else. So I think he is guilty.
Thanks. At that time, the professor also mentioned lots drawing. It concerns moral standard. When you make use of lots drawing, some principles of equality or other principles to make decisions, does it mean you could violate certain established moral standards? This is the first thing he wanted to know. Secondly, if that person is willing to be killed by you, whether doing so is in line with our moral concepts, whether it is the right behavioral action. I would also give you this test now. If after killing Parker, these 3 people were on trial and sentenced to jail as punishment, would they be forgiven? That depends on how Parker saw this situation at that time and also on the degree of their repentance. Because something like breakfast was said at that time. It also depends on how sincere they are in acknowledging their mistakes, as well as how long they were to be imprisoned. For example, 5 years, 10 years or 20 years. It was up to whether Parker is satisfied or not. If he is, the hatred can be dissolved. That is why those mediators are so important, because all causes and effects and karmic retributions are made up out of the mind consciousness. When you are able to adjust and control people's mind, like the Lord Buddha or Guru Masters, it would elevate one's mind nature, liberating them from the cycle of karmic existence to attain Buddhahood and setting free from mind. But you don't have such capability. For example, when you bump into someone by accident, he would slap you. So it all up to the problem of mind nature. Why is a mediator important? It is because he adjusts and mediates the human mind, a mind-mediating person in the earthly world. Guru Masters are mind-mediating people in the outer world, and the Lord Buddha is the mind-mediator with the most supreme and highest wisdom. They tried to save us. If they can successfully mediate people's mind, then these people can be saved. If failed, their minds can't be mediated. The same goes to evil karmic retributions. If they could mediate people's mind, there would be less evil karmic retributions. If they couldn't, there would be more evil karmic retributions. That is why elevation of mind nature is right while descent of mind nature is wrong. This is exactly what I teach you. If these 2 people you said are willing to go to jail, or even beg to go to jail, and acknowledge their mistakes sincerely, whether Parker would forgive them would depend on how much this group of people have done. If they have done 100%, then they would get 100% forgiveness. In laws, There is no light or heavy degree is what you have decided. If they consider it right, then it is right, and if they think it is wrong, then it is wrong. It depends on the sincerity of their minds but not the quantity of consequentialism. It is the degree of sincerity of their remorseful minds that determines whether Parker would forgive them or not.
The more they repent, the easier for them to successfully get forgiveness from Parker. That was why Lord Buddha Shakyamuni taught remorse in his first year of teaching Buddhist Dharma. It concerns the elevation of mind nature.
If after feeling remorseful and crying for 5 nights, your mind nature still degrades, it means that you don't do well on repenting and don't know remorse. There are skills in feeling shamed. The remorse that helps you elevate the mind nature is good, but the remorse that makes you feel inferior, frustrated and depressed is bad. It is a wrong way to feel remorseful. Do you understand? Okay. Among the Harvard University students, what are their reasons? Those who think they should be released without laying charges gave reasons like that. It was a critical situation and they had to do that. They did it with reasons, so it was forgivable. Secondly, in order to survive, someone has to die. It is just like in a battle where some people are bound to be sacrificed. Thirdly, survivors can make compensation by doing charities for having killed one to save 3. These 3 survivors can do a lot of virtuous things in their future days. They can be great philanthropists to set up 1 million charitable organizations. You can make compensation by doing that. Of course, they should save and help those in need. Actually, many bad guys, before they do bad things, when they are doing the bad things and after they have done bad things, how would they forgive themselves? They also think that they can have redemption from sins by doing more charities. After committing corruption, you can make compensation by doing a lot of charities, or if you kill a person, you make compensation by saving 100 people. Another Harvard student said because they were so hungry that they lost their minds and became mentally ill. That would be the same as it is in law that it is not a committed crime if killing people is due to mental illness. He was so hungry that he became insane like crazy people with poor mental state, so we should forgive him and let him walk free. Many bad guys use excuses like this to ask for leniency. For example, they would explain that they are so furious, not in the right mind, they are drunk or they are confused or other similar explanations. Those who think they are guilty gave reason like what that student has said. They have no right to control other people's life and you don't have the authority to decide their right to live. This is the reason for a guilty verdict. At that time, the press, which was supposedly to be the most fair newspaper with conscience, said something like this: Parker was an orphan and he had no families to mourn him, but the other 3 people involved many more people. If these 3 people survived, the sufferings of many people would be spared and they would get happiness. On the contrary, if Parker was saved, only he benefited from it, while other people would have been in misery. Why doing that if Parker was willing to do that? Mind you, it is if, because in reality, Parker didn't accept this. If Parker was willing to do that, the case would be acceptable. If they drew lots, it is acceptable because it fits the principle of equality. This was the opinion of the press. In order to let you understand what is Buddhist Dharma, I want to test you. If Parker was willing to sacrifice, do you think killing is acceptable? Please raise your hand if you think it is acceptable. 6 of you raised hands. How many of you think even Parker gave his consent, it would still be unacceptable? Please raise your hands. And many of you choose this one and many of you understand Buddhist Dharma. Eventually, many people who thought they should be found guilty changed to think that it was acceptable. You must remember, just now many of you raised hands to choose that they should be found guilty and only a few chose to acquit them without laying any charge. Eventually, when the question is changed to if Parker himself was willing to do that, many of you chose that it could be acceptable and they can walk without charge. That is to say, many people would change the principles of their choice because of Parker's wish and his own mind consciousness. It can also be seen that you didn't care about other reasons and place your focus on Parker's mind consciousness regardless of bodhisattva, precepts, even laws. Then let's see why in moral standard, you would accept that. The reason is that you put focus on the mind consciousness of the victim and the killer. You think that the victim, Parker, was willing to do that and the killer can do it. Under the circumstance that the victim is willing to die and the killer is willing to kill, you think it is acceptable. This choice is different from your original principles and moral standard. You thought killing was not right before. This is what ordinary people think of as one of the standards of absolutism, which means a common thinking, the common mind consciousness and a consensus. But when you focus on individuals' mind consciousness, their consensus and principles would change. When he thinks of one is willing to die and one is willing to kill, the people who focus on individuals' mind consciousness would change. I would talk about how it would be seen in Buddhist Dharma later. Secondly, about the lots drawing. If Parker would follow the result of the lots drawing and willing to sacrifice, could it be acceptable under this situation? Such situation must go through a commonly held principle, which is like a country setting up laws and everyone must abide by this principle. It is the same situation in the boat. If going through lots drawing to set up a common rule and Parker was willing to sacrifice, do you think that could be acceptable? Please raise your hand if you think it can be acceptable. 2 of you raised hands. Who think it cannot be acceptable? Most of you. The result is that you would find that some people could accept that, at least 2 people. Some change their stance from finding him guilty to thinking it acceptable after going through lots drawing. Their reason is that they think it is workable with the principles of equality. Due to time limit, we can't get to ask the details of these 2 friends' opinion. I can only tell you what I think is the reason of their choice. It is also the common mind consciousness of ordinary people for making this choice. It can be seen from most of the cases that when a principle of equality is established, like when a country draws up some bills, then put it into a vote, that the minority follows the majority. If the majority thinks the principle to be right, the bill would pass. The same goes to the situation in the boat. When the principle of lots drawing is made, whoever drew that must accept the result. Judged by the choices you made, we can see that those who originally held the principle that killing is wrong in absolutism would change their principle after the lots drawing and they would think killing is acceptable under such circumstances. But this is one type of absolutism and there is another type of absolutism we talked about before, which means as long as we establish a common principle together, then everyone must abide by it. When these 2 types of absolutism contradict each other, some of you would change their choices. Now the question is to let you understand more what the core is. If the question is that after the lots drawing, Parker wasn't willing to die, which means that Parker originally agreed to the lots drawing, thinking that he wouldn't be chosen, but it turned out that he was chosen and he regretted and said that he didn't want to die. He even overturned the lots drawing, saying that said that the lots drawing was not fair. Should this be acceptable or not? Please raise your hand if you think it is acceptable. And, only 2 of you. How about those of you who think it is not acceptable? Fewer people. Don't know what is the core. Now we, as the judge, need to decide whether to acquit them or find them guilty. The story itself has changed into a different version, in which they all underwent a lots drawing and Parker was chosen from it. Though he didn't want to die, they killed him after all. If we see this from the point of a judge, although the case has undergone a lots drawing, Parker wasn't willing to sacrifice in the end and they killed him after all. How would we judge? Do you think that is acceptable? Acceptable means the situation whereby they had gone through the drawing lot, overturning the result, and insisting on killing Parker can be acceptable, and they could be acquitted. Unacceptable means you can't accept such doings and they can't kill Parker. Do you understand it now? Please raise your hand if you think they should be released without laying charge. The second choice is not acceptable and they can't be released without laying charge. Most of you think so. If you raise your hand, it means that it can be accepted through the principle of equality, but more importantly is the willingness to accept the result. That is, if you are chosen lots drawing which you have agreed on but overturned it, you violate the common principle, so if they kill you, they would not be guilty. That is the reason for choosing the acquittal verdict. You agreed to vote at first, but you overturned your words to accept the outcome. Under the circumstance of facing the result, they are not guilty. This is also the common mind consciousness of ordinary people. Perhaps, I have given you so many hints that not many of you have raised hand. Those who raise hands to take the acceptable choice are based on the principle of equality and willingness to accept the result. They combine these two principles to form one reasonable principle, making him to think that it is okay to take someone's life. That is why some people consider Parker's own mind consciousness is a very important reason. However, what you need to know is that even undergoing the principle of equality, if Parker wasn't willing to die, he was entitled to overturn that principle. This is what I want to tell you. Suppose you have signed a document to willingly donate your organs after death. You could still change your mind at your deathbed. It is okay to do that. The doctor can't insist on cutting you out to take away your organs against your wish at that time because you have signed a paper document. It can never be the case. Moreover, if the result of Lot's drawing is that Parker had to sacrifice and he was willing to do that, some people still think that it is not right to kill Parker under this situation. Raise your hand if you think killing Parker is not right. If you think there is nothing wrong, please raise your hand. And, also now I would teach you how to distinguish these matters. I believe that many of you know Buddhist Dharma. If they killed Parker, it didn't necessarily mean that the other three could be saved. One Harvard student said that although they did kill Parker to take his flesh so that they could survive at that time, there was no guarantee that there would come other boat to rescue them. So the result is still that the four of them would die and among them, one was killed. The point of his argument is that it is not correct to estimate the result. When making judgment, one should not use the estimated result as a factor in making a choice. Consequentialism itself has big problem. Therefore doing things in this way is not correct. There are problems in consequentialism which relies on the estimated results to make decision. But the professor refuted that Parker's sacrifice did actually save these three. In other words, estimation can be right sometimes, so why not use estimation? From the point of Buddhist Dharma, consequentialism can't be used to judge right and wrong. Also, an estimated result can't be made as a factor for judgment. Secondly, the Harvard student said that if they didn't get rescued, does it mean that they should keep on killing others? Just think, why keep on using utilitarianism to make judgment? Killing one can save three. Another 20 days later, the body has been consumed and they killed the second one. If they keep on doing that, what would happen to the last one? The last one would also die. Does it mean that they can keep on killing? That is one of the reasons why he can be a Harvard student and an elite. No one has brought up these two questions or thinking, arguments, explanations and so on in our discussion. That means you didn't watch the YouTube video. It is interesting. They knew of this way of thinking even though they didn't read Buddhist teachings. This proves how smart they are. Thirdly, from the moral value perspective, cannibalism itself is unacceptable. It is the principle of absolutism, so why have some reasons to twist it? For example, adding the use of Lot's drawing, his wish or physical sickness and so on, to make it an excuse to break this moral code to eat a human person. Fourthly, it is possible that something unfair or cheating would happen during the Lot's drawing, such as writing Parker's name on every piece of the lot paper. The result would then be the same. The professor also had a humorous description that if they all held a knife in hand and asked Parker's wish in front of him, the idea is the same. That is why lot drawing might not be a fair process and it is not a way to improve the moral standard. Then someone said that this standard is wrong because if insisting on killing Parker is wrong, then it is also a principle in absolutism, which rules that killing people is not right. It is actually the same in Buddhist Dharma. Please remember. That is why in some tests before, firstly it could test your level of Buddhist Dharma, secondly it could test your level of ability to analyze, thirdly it could see when you make judgment, whether you factor in other reasons to affect your judgment. For instances, if you insist on absolutism and think that killing is intolerable, but when you are influenced by his instigation, like using the lots drawing method as what happened on the boat, you change your own principles. Then, if the principle of conceding defeat applies, even when he takes back his words, you would still kill him. This way you change your principle again. If so, precept and bodhisattva would lessen bit by bit. It is because all kinds of reasons have factored in, so you need to be careful about these things. Sentient beings' mind consciousness should remain unchanged. Keep firm on precepts and bodhisattva and don't be swayed. Let's view this matter from the point of Buddhist Dharma. Although Parker's death should result in the gratefulness and debts of gratitude from the families of the other 3 people in terms of the law of causes and effects, it is just possibly so. It can be seen from what Dudley has written in diary that he had treated Parker as breakfast. How can you expect him to be grateful? When he was on trial, he also thought that he didn't commit any mistake and he just thought that his decision was right. How can he be grateful? Moreover, he didn't think that he has owed him any debt of gratitude. Therefore, it is only a possibility. Thirdly, if in the case, Parker was not willing to sacrifice, his mind nature would descend. He would think that he was murdered. The other 3 people's mind nature would also descend when they didn't have a grateful mind. So what if Parker was willing to sacrifice? Would his mind nature elevate? However, you need to remember, there are obstacles in it. There was a case that one of the 10 disciples of the Lord Buddha, Moggallana, after hearing what the Lord Buddha said to give out bodhisattva, he always believed in it. Whoever came to him for anything, he would satisfy him. Then a celestial being came to test him. He said to Moggallana that he was blind and if he could donate one of his eyes to him, it would save him. He kept begging him. Moggallana, as the number 1 person with supernatural power, took his eye out and gave it to him. But this person came to test Moggallana, so he smelt it and said it was stinky and questioned if he lied to him. Then he threw the eyeball on the ground and stamped on it. Moggallana was extremely angry, thinking what baffled him was that he had given out his bodhisattva to help others but didn't get any gratitude. The person he helped even took it for granted, ignored his help and scolded him. Moggallana was so furious that he became to think that people in the earthly world are vile, ignorant, and unwise and he decided not to give out bodhisattva anymore. The reason why I told you this is that as Dharma practitioners, when we need to make sacrifice, whether our mind nature would elevate, there are obstacles. You may be like Parker, when seeing other people treating you as breakfast, you would be angry, unhappy, and feel unworthy. However, you need to remember that as Dharma practitioner, your sacrifice is not for the result, your sacrifice is for your Dharma practice. You just do what you ought to do and it's not the reaction of that person, way of thinking and result to determine the worthiness of what you did, because you did this for the precepts and bodhisattva instead of for the reaction of this person and the result. This is what you need to remember. If you follow the precepts and bodhisattva to deal with matter, it can't be estimated through some results. Now the question is that if you were a Dharma practitioner and also Parker at that time, under the precepts and bodhisattva, would you oppose to drawing lots or agree to draw lots? Please raise your hand if you oppose to it. Please raise your hand if you agree to it. Then you need to remember, we should oppose to drawing lots. Why? Who can explain it? Actually the answer is mentioned before, just want to see whether you can absorb it or not. Hello, 2 Guru Masters. I think lots drawing has gambling element. Other than the gambling element, is there any other explanation? Let's see if you can say something to the point like the Harvard students.
Guru Master just said that the absolute principle of killing is impermissible from the point of precepts in Buddhist Dharma.
However, we mentioned in our last lecture that the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni killed a bandit to save all people in a village. It was precept's exception that is acceptable. Then why you said it is not? Could you please elaborate your answer?
It is because in the case of the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni, it is.
It is okay if you can't answer. Our wisdom is built up slowly and gradually. Two Guru Masters I would choose to oppose to Lot's drawing. Firstly, it is because I don't know whether the person chosen would be me. Even if it was me who were chosen, the other side has to kill me quickly. The other person should do it quickly. Although I am willing to sacrifice, I don't have the heart to ask someone to do such a cruel thing. However, if I weren't chosen, the other person would be the person to die. In the end, someone has to be killed, so I don't want to draw lots. You are right. This is a very good answer. Is there any other answer? There should be one answer that you know.
Actually, to decide what to do by drawing lots, the beneficiaries would be those three people, and it would only increase their utilitarianism in their minds. It is a choice that would make their mind nature descend.
Yes, what you said is very good. Anything we do should be judged by whether it would elevate or descend our mind nature. We have talked about that before. Besides, a student just said something about the existence of Bodhicitta, but it is not very clear. In the situation of Lot's drawing, if you agree to participate in the Lot's drawing, it turns out to be wrong, because in the principle of Lot's drawing, equalitarian is applied. But we can't let the word of equality blind our eyes, and we must identify clearly the motive behind the Lot's drawing, which, in this case, is to let one person die. The one who is to die is among us, but it is not like warriors drawing lots to decide who should fight to death to save the country. As can be seen, the difference here is that the participants in the Lot's drawing are also the biggest beneficiaries at the same time. This also proved the lack of Bodhicitta. Once participating in the Lot's drawing, it means that one of us would have to die. When that person dies, there would be no more Bodhicitta. They know in their minds that if someone dies, they would be rescued. This is a behavioral action that would reduce Bodhicitta, instead of a behavioral action that would truly help others to elevate Bodhicitta. Therefore, drawing lots is not a good principle. We need to remember that if in any principle, there will be a person to be sacrificed, you can never do that. However, if there was a Lot's drawing in which no one would have to be sacrificed irrespective of how big or small benefits the beneficiaries would gain, then it could proceed. For example, in apportioning a property into 3 portions of 1 million, 2 millions and 3 millions, it is okay to use Lot's drawing to see who gets which portion. Of course, you can also say that they also sacrifice in some way in this kind of Lot's drawing, because when compared to the beneficiary of 2 million, the 1 million beneficiary gets 1 million less, and compared to the 3 million beneficiary, the 2 million beneficiary gets 1 million less. But as long as it is a windfall but not money rewarded for the hard work of a person or company, it would be like buying a lottery ticket. If you win the lottery money for a ticket bought with $2 paid by each person, it would be unreasonable for the people who didn't pay for the ticket to blame the ones who have paid for it. Under this circumstance, someone paid for what they earn and people concede defeat. It is a kind of acceptable Lot's drawing. However, if the result of the Lot's drawing would be for someone to lose life or something important, there is no Bodhicitta, and it is also unacceptable. Why? It is because Bodhicitta itself is for you to do good things and to save people. But in this case, Bodhicitta is described as a reason for killing one to save 3 people. You would totally forget about the person who would die, because for him, there is no Bodhicitta. That is why our vision can never be clouded under precepts and Bodhicitta. We can't magnify the Bodhicitta for 100 people because of killing one can save 100 and be indifferent about the Bodhicitta of the death of that person. During this process, you have already hurt Bodhicitta. The thinking of sacrificing other people has already planted in your mind consciousness. Then you make it sound better to say it is Bodhicitta to make yourself feel comfortable. But from the perspective of Buddhist teachings, it is damaging Bodhicitta instead of enhancing it. There is no elevation but regret in our mind nature. In fact, we would often think about the feelings of that victim in our minds. In our Dharma practice, We can't enter into the state of emptiness. Perhaps during the progression in our Dharma practice, the case of this victim would hinder you from attaining the Buddhahood and is also your karmic retribution. This is a problem of making a mistake when setting up the foundational base of mind training. It is one of the reasons for not being able to attain Buddhahood in the end. That's why I taught you to make things clear. For example, lots drawing is not right, so we need to oppose to it, because lots drawing appears to be fair, but in fact there is unfairness in it, because that person may not want to die, but under the lots drawing, he had to die. This is the unfairness and would cause resentment. That is why in the case, I have added few more questions other than those said by the professor. That is, after the lots drawing, Parker was willing to sacrifice, and also Parker wouldn't want to die after drawing lots. These two would be to let you discover the principles and personal wish within it. Whether or not it would affect your bodhicitta is the key point. There are actually many similar things that are added in our daily life. These things would bring confusion to us when we make judgments. This is the great area that would result in misjudgments as well as obstacles in Dharma practice. It is indeed a problem of the mind training itself. I have asked you and some of you have given the right answers, that in the lots drawing, whether it would do harm to the person who was the killer, because I agreed to draw lots, making him become the killer to commit the crime of homicide, and causing his mind nature to descend. If I didn't agree to draw lots, everyone would die at natural cause and such thing would not happen. At the moment his knife stabbed at other person, his mind nature started to descend for bearing the crime of killing. In the cycle of karmic existence, the karmic retribution is that he would be killed in his next lifetime. This is what you need to remember. When you agree to draw lots, it equals to you want someone to kill the other person and that person would die unwillingly. In this way, their mind nature would all descend. For those who are so cruel to eat his flesh and drink his blood, their mind nature would also descend. From the look of it, these people had survived, but their mind nature had all descended. This is what I need to tell you. The same even goes to the case of killing one to save three. The two cases are not bodhicitta and they are a wrong way of doing things. This is the way to differentiate. Using the mind nature to differentiate. In the second question, if you were Parker, would you choose to accept to be killed or refuse to be killed? Based on many hints I just gave to you, I believe that you would know how to answer. Now you were Parker and you were chosen in the lots drawing, whether you should accept or refuse to be killed. Please raise your hand if you refuse to be killed. N. You all know Buddhist Dharma. How about those who chose to accept to be killed? I want to hear your reasons. At the beginning, I thought lots drawing is not fair because it would be the majority oppresses the minority. However, if we chose to draw lots, it is bound to include the spirit of sacrifice. If I have taken Bodhicitta's precepts, I am obliged to spare life, then I would do it. I should honor my words because I accepted the lots drawing. You think you should honor your words? I would like to ask you one question. If the lots drawing never happened as it is in the reality. Under this situation, when Dudley came to you with a knife in his hand and prayed to you, and you were weak and very ill on the verge of your death, would you choose to accept or refuse to be killed? I think it is very difficult to answer. It depends on what my mind thought at that time. If I could really sacrifice myself to save others, I would do it. Actually, it is he who helped me to do it. Of course, I know I would have something to do with precept violation and it would undermine the mind nature. Now I would hover among the dilemmas. Under that situation, I would see which part my mind would focus on, whether it is to become that person's offerings or elevate in other aspects. What if I want you to choose at this moment? Because we would do it the same way. Raise your hand if you've made a choice and raise your hand if you can't be at the scene. Then I would choose not to do it because my mother is by my side and I haven't paid her the debts of gratitude. Refuse. Okay? Thank you. How about the other one who raised hand?
I just chose to accept being killed. I should put it in this way. If it were me, I would choose to kill myself and let them eat my flesh so that they would not have to arouse their killing minds. Since I have given out my bodhicitta, why let them break the precept of killing?
N. Your idea is to accept being killed but want to reduce sins of others, so you choose to kill yourself, right?
Yes, that is because if they killed me, even if I didn't blame them, they might be killed by me in next life. What I did can reduce the evil cause. Moreover, if I have given out my bodhicitta, why not giving out my flesh? The others didn't need to kill me and I would kill myself instead. In this way, their mind consciousness could be elevated because I'd volunteered to sacrifice. There is a difference between this situation and killing a pig. It would change their mind consciousness. I would also ask them to pray in front of me. During the time of my suicide, I hope that their mind consciousness would change and not to kill me for my flesh.
Thanks. Let's continue. If you were Parker, firstly, you would volunteer to be killed, just like that student said about suicide. The difference is that you asked someone else to do it. Secondly, you wouldn't do anything proactively. You didn't agree to draw lots and you didn't do anything proactively.
Do you remember last time we mentioned about the story of sacrificing the body to feed a tiger from the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni's biographies in past lives? This case in the Buddhist Dharma did happen in reality.
If I were Parker, some agreed to draw lots and some didn't. In this stalemate, what should I do? Should I volunteer to be killed, or should I do nothing? Please raise your hand if you think I should volunteer to be killed. 2 people. Please raise your hand if you think I should do nothing. N. You all know Buddhist Dharma and understand what I said. Let me explain it more clearly. If I were Parker, other than to do what I mentioned above, is there anything else that he could do? A student just brought up that he would choose to kill himself. Is there anything you want to add? If not, I will continue. Let me explain it again that in the Buddhist Dharma, what is supposed to be right or wrong? What is to have bodhicitta and what is not to have bodhicitta? What are the criteria and standard to judge right from wrong based on the elevation and descent of the mind nature? How they are applied in this case, you need to listen to it carefully.
In the story of sacrificing body to feed a tiger from the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni's biographies in past lives, it said that he saw a tigress and some tiger cubs. The tigress was so hungry that it didn't have the strength to feed the tiger cubs.
As a result, the tigress wanted to eat one of the tiger cubs to regain its strength to save the rest of tiger cubs. At that moment, the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni sacrificed himself to help this tigress. He put himself close to the tigress's mouth to feed the tigress. Because the tigress was so hungry that it didn't have any strength to chase, so why not just putting myself in front of the tigress and let it eat me to fill up its stomach? Later, although he felt in great pain because of the biting of tigress, his mind consciousness was elevated vigorously. He has been practicing bodhisattva's deeds and he was so firm about it that he didn't have hatred in mind because of the pain caused by biting or to scold the tigress. It is not something that everyone can do. The reason why the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni could do it is because he has been practicing for many lifetimes. That is why his mind nature was elevated even much better with no resentful mind after that life. He eventually became Buddha after all these successful Dharma practices. In my analysis of the case, what you need to remember is that the tiger is a beast and it can't understand receiving gratitude and paying debt of gratitude. There is no mind nature for it to elevate, so it would be an animal life after life, and is very difficult for it to get out of the animal path. So you need to remember, when you fall into the animal path, the hell's path or the ghost's path, whether you can get out of it depends on your mind. Mind training is not for practicing the Dharma Yudam. Even if someone has visualized the appearance of Yudam in life, or even the hell Yamantaka, he would still fall into the hell path if the mind nature was not good. If someone is unfortunate to fall into those evil paths and wants to get out of it, it doesn't rely on visualization of the appearance of Yudam but the linking of one's mind nature with the magnetic field. Why the tiger can't get out of it? It is because that it is tiger and it doesn't know about gratitude. Even if it has eaten a person, it wouldn't thank him and its mind nature can't elevate, so it would be a tiger life after life. However, human beings are different.
The tiger itself was already in the animal path. Its mind is ignorant and stupid, because the animals themselves are ignorant and stupid, and they don't know how to elevate mind nature nor to pay debts of gratitude. They only eat and sleep.
The best they know is to take care of their own children. Whereas the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni was eaten because he did have bodhicitta and he did elevate his mind nature. But we should note that had he made the mind nature of the tigress descend, the tigress was already in the animal path, so it didn't do it any harm, but for his own mind nature, there was elevation. That equals to what he did was right. That is why what the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni did had elevated his mind nature, while the mind nature of the tigress didn't elevate. So this is not the fault of the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. Now I want to talk about human beings. Human beings are in the human path and they have yet to descend into animals or ghost. They haven't got rebirths or downfall into the evil path. They know what is gratitude, what is the principle, and they know it is wrong to kill people. As such, offering others your flesh means you have bodhicitta but not wisdom. In this case, if you are willing to kill yourself to let them eat you flesh, this way of doing shows bodhicitta but not wisdom. The karmic fruition would not be as much as that of the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. Although your bodhicitta increased because of spirits of sacrifice, the level of bodhicitta elevation would not be as much as that of the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. Cannibals, his mind nature would descend. A student has just mentioned that, at the time of lots drawing, people had already thought of eating other in mind and they thought they could get away with it luckily. They didn't realize that thinking about being eaten by others or eating other itself has already harmed the bodhicitta, even with or without drawing lots. Even if you volunteer to kill yourself, you shouldn't do it in this way, because you didn't offer your body for a tiger to eat, but to human beings. Human beings have thinking and that person will not become a human being in future. You did him harm by letting him eat your flesh. He will never become human being in the future and will fall down to the three evil paths. Why? It is because he dares to eat human flesh and drink human blood. His mind nature is bound to descend. You did a wrong thing although you had good intention. Although for the bodhicitta, you kept him alive. But which is more important, whether it is to make his life exist or to elevate or descend the mind nature, to give it more thoughts? It is the elevation of mind nature that is more important, instead of lives. You can have many lives after lives and what you have most is lives, but if your mind nature descends and fall into the animal path, there is no turning back. It is not a joke, so our Dharma practice is a permanent pursuit of elevation. No matter how, we should avoid descent, because it is easy to descend but difficult to elevate. That is why being eaten by other is wrong in Buddhist Dharma, especially killing yudams in practicing Vajrayana Buddhism. The visualizing of yudams is to save more people in the Buddha land. But it has stopped because you are killed. This is wrong, so it is wrong to kill yudams or commit suicide. You might say killing yourself is for bodhicitta and for others, but let me tell you that this kind of bodhicitta is wrong. You do harm to that person and he would descend from the human path to become an animal or in the ghost path or the hell's path in the future. Cannibalism is very cruel. If it makes the mind nature of that person even worse, it would only speed up their people's downfall for rebirths. It is not a wise way to do thing and it will harm people. It is not wisdom.
Thirdly, if you choose to draw lots, it equals to becoming one of the cannibals. That is what I hope to hear in your answers. Just like those Harvard students who said something to the point, that is in acknowledging lots drawing.
It is the same as acknowledging killing people. That is in acknowledging lots drawing. It is the same as acknowledging killing people. There was a person who would kill him, eat his flesh and drink his blood, including others in the circle. It is easy for one to change in the process. Like Brooks, he refused to be part of cannibals at the beginning. But later when he felt hungry and saw the remaining two persons eating, he participated in it. Principles actually can be easily swayed and can also influence mind nature. At the moment when you agreed on lots drawing, it means to agree on killing and eating human flesh. This is what would happen after drawing lots. If the lots drawing is only a lottery activity with no cannibalism and other acts involved, then it is acceptable. On the contrary, if someone would have to die after the lots drawing, then it is not acceptable. This act is precept violation and it has nothing to do with bodhicitta. Don't ever use bodhicitta to cheat yourself and others that this killing would save 3 people who could then build 100 charity organizations to help many more people. This is something out of context. It would also be wrong in terms of the Buddhist Dharma. Even if the one being saved is a great philanthropist, who can save 100 million people in the future, it is still a wrong way of doing things, because the mind nature of this great philanthropist would descend. In the scenario that we accept to be killed or volunteer to be killed, the result is the same. So if we as a Dharma practitioner, what should we do? Under the requirements of to-do precepts, we should try not to make the situation of cannibalism happen, so as not to speed up the descent of their mind nature. Therefore, what we could do is firstly let the death come naturally. If fortunately a ship happened to arrive to save them, no matter how many people can survive, each of them has their own karmic forces. When a ship arrived, how many people can be saved would depend on their respective karmic forces. We should let nature take its course and allow karmic retribution to appear, instead of trying to pose obstacles along the way. Death is not fearful and it is only the rebirths. The question is whether the mind nature would elevate or descend in rebirth. That is the key point. Secondly, we should hand out food to other people. As Dharma practice, you shouldn't eat the 2 cans of preserved turnip and the cod turtle to speed up our death. At least we didn't violate the precepts and it would serve as stimulation, like General Cuckoo stimulated his soldiers to imagine a bayberry field not far away to quench their thirst. It would make the human body to secrete more substances to help quell the thirst. You could also imagine cloud as land, as nectar, making you feel full in stomach. All these methods can stimulate your potential, making your life last a bit longer. As long as the inherent potential is stimulated, you would be able to sustain your life from 10 days to 20 days. Thirdly, adding prayers, practicing Dharma, and merits dedication. Fourthly, opposing to all proposals that could harm the mind nature, including lots drawing, suicide, killing, excuses like the sick and the weak should die and orphans' life didn't matter and so on. All of these would harm the mind nature. You shouldn't mention it nor think about it. You would break the precepts even you think about it. When things are out of balance, without wisdom, and you are afraid of death, you should remind yourself that you are not afraid of death and it is your own law of causes and effects to face the karmic retributions. What happens to you today is the consequence of what you have done before and it is the retribution you should bear. We shouldn't harm others' benefits to make ourselves live longer and we shouldn't do something sinful, not afraid of death and accept karmic retributions. This is the law of causes and effects. In terms of precepts, we shouldn't kill people and draw lots, because the mind nature would be affected and we shouldn't drag other people to descend to the animal path. We should hand out food, give encouragement, wish praying,
Dharma practice and merits dedication, so as to balance the situation at that moment. As for not to do precepts, we shouldn't agree on the strategy of killing or cannibalism, including lots drawing.
We should not fail to save others from death unless our own life or other people's life is at risk, or else it would be up to individuals' own bodhicitta and the situation. That is to say, as long as the proposal would not endanger others' lives, then we should save people and it would not break the precepts. Let me give you an example. In the battlefield, several soldiers with guns are killing innocent civilians. 2 groups of civilians are hiding in different shelters. If in your hiding place, there are 50 civilians with you, but the other group of civilians in another shelter have been found and they are waiting to be shot down, would you choose to rally several of your companions to fight and subdue the enemies, or you choose to do nothing because you are afraid to expose all the civilians hiding in the same shelter with you? It all depends on individuals and the situation to decide whether to give a hand or not. Not saving people from death indeed breaks precepts, but under some circumstances that are difficult to strike a balance. If you decide not to come out and let the soldiers shoot the civilians without doing a thing, it wouldn't be counted as precepts violation. For example, in the Bodhisattva's precepts, you need to save people from death, but under some circumstances, not saving people from death would not be precepts violation. The situation mentioned above is that kind of situation. However, if you see the killing happening, you can't just not to pray, practice Dharma, dedicate merits. If you have not done so, it would all be precepts violation. These are not to do precepts. So the conclusion is that mind nature determines the causes and effects, as what we talked about in our last lecture. The elevation or descent of the mind nature would decide your rebirths. That is why wisdom is an important part. Wisdom can build the foundational base of mind training and set up criteria for insight to help us distinguish right and wrong. When we are learning Buddhist Dharma, although we know about the causes and effects, precepts, and bodhisattva, we still easily make misjudgments in the gray area in our daily life. That is because when we set up the criteria and standard, we are not wise or delicate enough and we end up making choices in chaos. So in some of the questions raised before, I found that most of you understand what I mean, but some of you still don't, so you would make the wrong choices. In the future, you need to take notice that in your criteria and standard of mind consciousness, some of them are not stable and some of them are wrong. You shouldn't extrapolate the result with consequentialism, and then use the result to determine right or wrong. You should use 3 things in Buddhist Dharma, but even though you used all of them, it doesn't mean it is enough. So you need to use wisdom to achieve balance in things, so as to solve the problems. Although I have taught you some methods, it doesn't mean that they are all feasible. It would be like even Dudley prayed to the weak and dying Parker. He would still violate the precepts even though he had fully done so. Therefore, we must acquire wisdom. If so, then using wisdom to do things would be right. That is why there are 2 things in Buddhist Dharma. The first one is absolute, outer worldly, truth, which operates in the Dharma realm, where the Dharmakaya Buddhas exist. It also refers to the meaning of emptiness, neither voidness nor existence. But you need to pay attention that there are no causes and effects in the Dharma realm at that level. Causes and effects only exist in the 3 realms. While relative, worldly, truth is actually about the law of causes and effects in the earthly world and it is also the operating rules in 3 realms. Then how can we integrate these 2? This is very important. All kinds of questions we raise today don't involve emptiness and I've only taught you to decide the right and wrong of the behavioral actions based on the elevation and descent of the mind nature. Then how can we combine emptiness to integrate into the Dharma realm for Dharma practice and then apply absolute, outer worldly, truth and relative, worldly, truth in our daily life? We haven't taught that. Now I will give you a test and I think you all know how to answer. A mother and her son and you are in the lifeboat and you all have been hungry for 10 days. That mother is so hungry that she is unconscious and is about to die. Her son really wants to save his mother, so he begs you, could you please kill me and save my mother with my blood and flesh? Do you think you should say yes to it? Please raise your hand if you say yes. N. You all understand what I told you. How about you? What is your reason for you to choose to say yes? Because it is. Because that son really wants to save his mother and this is his personal wish. It wouldn't have any cause and effect. It is a good thing to do. Why it would not involve cause and effect? Any behavioral action would have causes, as well as effects, but he kills himself to save his mother. But now he is begging someone else to kill him. I wouldn't beg someone to kill. You choose not to beg others, but the question here is that the son is begging you to kill him. You are the one who have to make a choice, not the son. Would you say yes to his request or not? I wouldn't say yes. Of course. I thought I haven't made that clear enough. It is impossible to say yes to it. Why? Before the lecture is over, I would finish explaining it. That mother is indeed unconscious, but when she wakes up, although she doesn't know she has eaten her son, she would definitely know that her son is dead, right? Then she would be extremely sad and hope that she would die with her son, even to kill herself because it is really too painful. After the mother has died, she would know the truth when she arrived in the spiritual realm. Then she would find out that she has drunk her son's blood and eaten his flesh. How could she be at ease? She might never remove her guilty feeling in a trillion years and her mind nature would descend greatly. If that is the case, when you say yes, it would do harm to the mother. When she got downfall for rebirths, she would be stuck for more than a trillion light years. It is culpa. It would be a forceful explanation by using light year. As a result, you tried to save the mother but it turned out to harm her. Secondly, the one who killed would also be tragic. If he saw that mother killed herself or felt great pain in mind, he would regret and feel guilty. After his death, he would know that this mother's mind nature descend because she has eaten her son, which would increase his guilt for being a killer. Furthermore, he would bear the crime of killing at the same time and he wouldn't be exonerated because he killed on others' request for help. The cruelty would come out when you used your knife in hand to kill other person, which would further affect the descent of your mind nature. As for the son, he would know after death that his mother was in great pain and realize that his choice was wrong. He would even regret more when he knew that his mother would get downfall for rebirths, even though he had the spirit of sacrifice. But it is impossible to put it in right use and is not enough to stop the descent of the mind nature. Even though we can see that he cared about his mother deeply and wanted to save her, the reaction of that mother would also influence the son's mind nature. The more the mother felt the pain, the more it would do harm to the son's mind nature. So in the end the mind nature of these three people descend with no chance of elevation. This is what we must not do. This is wisdom and it is also what I mainly taught here today. You know something about it and there is no need for more explanations. I'll arrange some homework for you to answer in the next lecture. In the first case, a senior officer A of a big company is asked by his superior B to raise the salaries for 3,000 employees in secret by using administrative tactics to circumvent the normal approving procedures in the company and to cover up the account records and ledgers by rearranging the resources in accounting. This senior officer A declined. Eventually, his superior B promoted the senior officer's subordinate C to a rank higher than senior officer A. This promotee C did everything what his superior B instructed him to do and violated the rules to increase the salaries of 3,000 employees. Senior officer A didn't resent his superior B, but he hated C for using unscrupulous tactics to get promoted.
He didn't like C to be his new boss, so he disrespects C in behaviors. As a result, the relationship between C and A turns sour.
The first question is that if senior officer A is a Buddhist practitioner, should he refuse his superior B's request?
In fact, after his refusal, C got promoted to a rank higher than A. These are known facts.
The second question, if you were senior officer A, would you hate C for having used unscrupulous tactics to get promoted? The third question, in terms of behavioral action, should you express your disrespect towards him?
As a Buddhist practitioner, how would you get along with these people?
The fourth question,
if you were senior officer A, what should you do to live with the situation and to elevate your mind nature? This is a real-life case and it is also the questions raised by a Buddhist practitioner. Think about that. If it were you, what would you do? You can also discuss questions with us just like this Buddhist practitioner. You can send us an email with your questions and we would see what cases we can bring up. A student has once brought up a case. It is about a stock market trader who is always watchful for the rise and fall of money amount. What should he do to balance his mind training? These are all about criteria and standards of mind training related to our occupations. How should we make these criteria and standards? In our last 2 lectures on mind training, the focus of the content rests on the mind. You could use these criteria to answer the questions in homework. If you have any difficult problems, you can also raise them to me.
Now because we use mind nature to determine causes and effects, so if Dharma practitioners have any deviations in mind nature, they would be in the magnetic field of negative energy.
You would be connected to the evil path and you are linked to it. Especially when you die, your mind consciousness would instantly migrate to the evil path.
This is why we put so much emphasis on the training of mind nature. This is the natural feature of nature and is also a key point that all Vajrayana Buddhist practitioners have neglected. Especially nowadays, many Vajrayana Buddhist practitioners ignore causes and effects. This is what I teach you to see today. This is the law of causes and effects, which cannot be got rid of by superstitious power of blessing.
All Rinpoches.
Even he has become Guru Master, he is still under the karmic force of causes and effects. Even when you have become Buddha, like the Lord Buddha Shakyamuni who has attained Buddhahood, he is still under the karmic force of causes and effects. He must enter into the Dharma realm where the operating rule is absolute, outer-worldly, truth. With the Dharma nature existing there, he can then be free from the control of the law of causes and effects. So in fact, there would always be causes and effects. It doesn't mean that after you have learnt certain methods, you can then go against the law of causes and effects. Because of that, Vajrayana Buddhism puts great emphasis on the quality of mind, but nowadays Vajrayana Buddhism is taught by some people who don't put emphasis on the quality of mind, which is really dangerous. If you don't have premium quality of mind, you can't learn.
Or the Guru Masters can't transmit and teach those Dharma practices centered on mental strength to their disciples. In order to ensure that Guru Masters who transmit and teach Dharma would abide by this rule,
Vajrayana Buddhism requires that Guru Masters who transmit and teach Dharma must possess the lineage qualifications given by their Guru Masters with lineage,
and authorize them to transmit and teach Dharma. Then they can be regarded as qualified Guru Masters to transmit and teach Dharma. He must focus on precepts. Guru Master for transmission of Dharma who possesses the lineage qualification, after he is willing to take in disciples who trust him, he still needs to observe disciples for 6 years or more.
Because in nature, it is the mind nature that determines causes and effects. If you just randomly teach him some formula on visualizations and the mental strength operation, he would die even faster. So we need to observe disciples for 6 years or more before we could teach him some Dharma practice methods mainly on mental strength so as not to accelerate his death. If he has not yet reached the first step in mind training, he hasn't set up the criteria to judge right and wrong, and use wisdom to deal with matters as I just talked about. If you have tested him on his views on causes and effects or criteria just like I asked you to raise hands, if you haven't tested that,
if you don't precisely know how your disciple would think, you can't transmit such Dharma methods to him. In total there are 12 years altogether. He observe you for 6 years and you observe him for another 6 years.
In total there are 12 years. During these 12 years, the task of Guru Master for transmission of Dharma is to adjust and train the quality of disciples' minds. That is why I said today that I want to adjust the quality of your mind and hope that your standard will be elevated. It is a pity that nowadays there are so many people who are eager for quick success and get instant benefits. It is the same case in seeking Dharma and in practicing Dharma.
Even people who give and teach Dharma are like that. So very often, for the sake of quick gain on Dharma methods, skills, and blessings, they would blindly ask for Guru Masters to give them empowerments,
facilitating many unscrupulous Guru Master who don't care about precepts. Some Guru Masters who, for the sake of making a living and without any virtue, like to show off about their having many Dharma methods. Also some so-called Guru Masters with lineage for transmission of Dharma who enjoy having power would casually transmit empowerments and even provide many of them. They make no effort to train their disciples' qualities of minds. Such act equals to violating the precepts, which means that you don't do what you should do. Instead you do everything that you shouldn't do. The outcome would be for the Guru Masters with lineage for transmission of Dharma to become also fake Guru Masters. They would lead a group of people with greed and ignorance, full of anger in heart and arrogance to enter the door to hell together. So Green Tara is well aware of the rule that mind-nature determines causes and effects.
She already said that if Guru Master has good lineage, but your Guru Master has poor foundation in Buddhist Dharma, he can't even explain how the mind-nature determines causes and effects, and his character is bad.
It means that his Dharma of mind is very bad as well. The deities or Dharma protectors in the lineage system would not recognize him. If you follow him, you would enter into his terrible magnetic field, causing the same effect. You are unable to connect with deities or Dharma protectors and the system for their help. Therefore, Green Tara told us, you must carefully seek Guru Master who can teach you how to cope with problems at life and difficulties after death. A qualified Guru Master must focus very much on the training of precepts, mind training, nature of emptiness and light. You need to dedicate to your Guru Master to maintain a pure samaya, meaning to trust each other. You also need to focus more on Guru Master's level of Buddhist Dharma and teaching ability, that is to say, how he teaches you mind training. Now I only teach you the first step. There are many more on mind training.
Real blessing is Guru Master's practical teachings given to disciples so that the Buddhist Dharma can be implanted in the disciples' mind, and to induce their own potential abilities to help themselves.
If the Guru Master only knows about ceremonial rituals and talks a lot on superstition, brags about his abilities on Dharma practice but does not know how to explain in-depth and real Buddhist Dharma, the Guru Master would lead his disciples to fall down together for rebirths in terrible places. Green Tara also said that Dharma practices which only focus on various kinds of deities' empowerment and ceremonial rituals
rely on objects for blessing and Dharma instruments, but neglect the practical and appropriate Dharma practices for remedy. Unfocused Dharma practices that do not even have the basic mental concentration are doomed to fail.
So you need to remember not to be misled and enticed by all the external looks of ceremonies or affected by the big title of a Guru Master.
Thinking that Dharma practice is only an easy and simple thing, and look for a Guru Master carelessly, and come to realize the mistakes after death, then everything will be too late. So Green Tara told us that other than having the basic mental concentration, you still need other strengths in Dharma practice and coping methods. Precepts, meditation power, and wisdom. I have talked a lot on precepts. Although I didn't explain in detail what each precept is about, but I've given you a general idea of what it is. Now I start teaching you how to set up these criteria. Only meditation has not been taught.
Actually, I have repeatedly said that precepts and wisdom are the cornerstone of any Dharma practice. Not any one of them can be left out. This is the traction of the karmic force, the trial you will face in the future because you are still in this earthly world, so you would have to face it in the end. I have talked about that in the first lecture, that is, can you ensure that your Dharma practice is useful and works? The second lecture, what is the relationship between your destiny and Sahadeva? The third lecture, how to avoid the post-death trial and the abstruseness of the Pure Land. The fourth lecture, the method to deduce future destiny. The fifth lecture, the high degree of risks and danger in the post-death world. The sixth lecture, how do characteristic inclinations of karmic retributions and current choices influence one's destiny?
The seventh lecture, how to make the spirits of deceased to let go their attachment to greed.
The eighth lecture, the impact of one's attachment to anger and hatred in afterlife. The ninth lecture, the frequently encountered problems on being trapped after death. The 10th lecture, after-death dangers triggered by ignorance. The 11th lecture, as proven that life still continues to exist after death, what dangers would be encountered. The 12th lecture, why we need to fight for the dominance of mind in the spiritual realm. The 13th lecture, what are the disintegration parts in the post-death world?
The 14th lecture, what are the dangers of non-religious spiritual training practices?
The 15th lecture, the relationship of danger, opportunity, and mind nature in Dharma practice. The 16th lecture, which is the beginning of the mind training episode, that is, how to use wisdom to set up the foundation of mind training, and
the 17th lecture, which is the second episode of the mind training series, that is, how to balance the right and wrong in the gray area.
This is the end of today's lecture. Thanks. Wish there is an increase in fine virtuous wonders.